Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special hour edition of our Cincinnati Bearcats football and basketball show. I am Alex Frank as we are live from the Walter E. and Marilyn Bartlett Television Center inside UC's CCM. Tonight, I am joined on my right by Caitlyn Zieleniewski, who is really toughing it out tonight after having, reconstructive surgery on your ankle, but you're a warrior, and you are here tonight.
Thank you.
Ethan Bastian, also on my right, who is Halloween dressed up as Marvin Lewis.
Hey, man, gotta get in where you fit in. But
Well,
the Bengals got to win on Sunday. So
yes, they did, and we were there. And Caitlin, you, what are you going for Halloween?
Mike Wazowski.
Fair enough. Happy Halloween, by the way, to each and every one of you. Hollow rain, actually.
Yeah.
Terrible rainy weather today. And on my left, I'm joined by Zach Fries, making his first television appearance of the season. Zach, you went the
I just went, I went
business
I went
casual.
Neo, except in black.
Yeah, well, I went white for that reason. So, anyway, welcome to our special hour edition today. What we're going to do is we're going to preview the upcoming basketball season, which tomorrow, Fifth Third Arena opens for the Bearcats exhibition game against Tusculum. That game at 7. It will not be broadcast on TV or radio, but it will be streamed on Bearcats TV. And then, of course, the season opens next Wednesday at 6 o'clock against the Ohio State University. That's the first 30 minutes, previewing the basketball season. The last 30 minutes, we'll be previewing this Saturday's football game against Navy. Should be a good one. It's Military Appreciation Day. The Bearcats wearing all black uniforms. Can't wait for it. But first things first, basketball season right around the corner, and you can't help but be excited, guys, of the newly renovated Fifth Third Arena.
Yeah, it speaks to the new arena, just like all the students out there getting tickets for Ohio State. I saw air mattresses. I saw lines. I saw lines all the way up through staircases at Nippert. It's just the buzz around this has been huge for a couple of years now, and the old Fifth Third Arena just wasn't cutting it, and we're gonna have one of the best on-campus arenas in the country. So yeah, it should be a great crowd, even tomorrow. I think just the buzz around just being in there, and of course Ohio State, who hasn't played us in a long time, them finally coming down. It's the atmosphere for that game is gonna be wild.
Yeah, no doubt. Just it makes no more construction means I can actually get to my classes easily. So no problem with that for me. And then also just the fact that the Bearcats have a very exciting season. The way they ended the season last season was kind of disappointing with such a promising regular season that they had. There's nothing but excitement when Ohio State is always that's a traditional program right there that you love to see a team play, especially in your home opener. It doesn't get any better than that. So I can't wait to see it.
I just think it's going to be a really good game, like with it being Ohio State and like the newly arena opening. Like I just think that all of that, I don't like to like make predictions, but I honestly think that like we have a lot of momentum going into that game, like it being like huge opener, like in the new arena. Like I don't see UC losing that game.
Well, you certainly hope not. I mean, it'd be a great statement win, but it's not like your typical first college basketball game for a major program like Cincinnati. But that's, I think, what I like the most about it is you're facing a big-name team like Ohio State. And Zach hit on earlier, the excitement around the newly renovated Fifth Third Arena is off the charts. I'm looking forward to it getting in there tomorrow for just an exhibition game. I mean, that's how exciting this is, and I think that a lot of fans, over 9,000 season tickets were sold. If that doesn't tell you anything about how the excitement is, on what level it's on, I don't know what does. And, it's not just Ohio State. The Crosstown Shootout is here this year. UCLA is coming in. And then even teams in the American Athletic Conference like Wichita State, SMU, UConn, those teams. I'm telling you what, every game it's going to be sold out. It's going to be rocking. Fun fact, 12,012 seats is the capacity. That is a nod, I just read an article about this, to the great Oscar Robertson.
Wow.
That's special. Yeah.
That's a very impressive stat.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that until I just read about it. So, the schedule, I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Obviously, I've been trying to memorize it. I pretty much do once the season starts. But obviously, the first game is important. Just what are your overall thoughts? We'll start there, and then we'll break it down as we go on.
I definitely think they have the potential to get a lot of wins this season. I know some people, they lost some starters, 3 stars, I believe, from last year's team. But they have a schedule that's winnable. Definitely in conference and out of conference play. But really, I think it's important that they get this win at home against Ohio State because they need to get show really the rankings where they are to show that they're a real team that can be a top 25 team in this season and be a team that can really play, be a favorite in the American Conference as well as non-conference play.
I think that with the preseason rankings, I think they were kind of ranked a little low than I thought they would be. But I mean, that just gives them a chance to come out and show people hey, we deserve to be ranked higher. And I can see why they might not be ranked as high, losing those 3 starters. But as McKernan said, they still have their whole bench back, and and it doesn't you need skill, but you also need chemistry, and if you have a team that's been playing together for a while, that's going to be a good team.
I think looking at the schedule, I think it's one of the more challenging schedules, non-conference-wise, we've had in years, just because Ohio State might be a little bit down, but then you're in the Emerald Coast Classic. You got Baylor, Ole Miss. They'll probably beat George Mason. We'll see. And then you play UNLV. You play Mississippi State. They get a lot of hype around them. They could be a top 15 team.
On the road, too.
Yeah, on the road, the crosstown shootout. So I think there's some challenges, especially December. UCLA at home, another game. So I think, they better be a little bit careful in December. There could be a few slip-ups, especially, losing the starters. But, I think they're going to be tested going into conference play, though, and I think that's important.
And I think so, too, because the American Athletic Conference, to me, is better than, maybe the casual college basketball fan would say. I mean, yes, it's not considered a Power 5 conference. I do consider one of the major conferences. I mean, you look at the first year, UConn wins the national championship, and there were, I believe, 2 other teams, or maybe even more than that. Yeah, I think there were more than that made the NCAA tournament. Cincinnati, Louisville was in the conference that year. Memphis also made the tournament. There were a lot of teams that did. But yeah, Zach, you hit on it with all the non-conference games. And one game, I don't think you mentioned it. Let's go December 1st, Saturday, December 1st, at UNLV. I mean, you're going all the way to Las Vegas. I mean, yeah, I don't know anything really much about UNLV and what they've done, but I will say from a psychological standpoint, going all the way out to the West Coast, time change, could be a tough game. And then you come back home to play Northern Kentucky, big rivalry, even though it's not as big of a rivalry as that other team here in Cincinnati. I won't say their name, but you know who they are. But that could be a trap game before, of course, the Crosstown Shootout, which is at home this year. There is going to be pressure on this team night in and night out. They lost a lot of guys, but I do think that Jaron Cumberland, you look at Nazir Brooks and Trayvon Scott, and, you can throw in even the freshmen, the newcomers, and Logan Johnson, LaQuill Harden, and Rayshawn Fredericks. And I'm trying to think of the other.
Eliel Sosome.
Yeah, Sosome. He's been here for a year. I'm looking at it's Prince Gillum Toyambi. That's the other newcomer. So, yes, it's going to be a different team. You don't know what you're going to get, but I think that's an exciting thing.
I think so, too. I mean, you've seen some of them play last year, and you, know what they're capable of, but also, a lot of times, they can change over the course of, a year or so. So I honestly think it's going to be kind of a new team that comes out this season, not one that we're used to seeing, but I think that could be a really good thing, and I definitely think that, they will be a pretty good team this year, for sure.
Yeah, and definitely starters. People always look at starters leaving as sometimes a bad thing, but sometimes it gives other people opportunities to shine. And Mick Cronin is shown to be a very good coach in college basketball for sure. They've been a consistently good program over his tenure here. And so there's really no reason for me to think that they're not going to at least be a solid team going into the season. And if some of these guys break out and come into bigger roles, getting more minutes that they didn't get last year, got to look for them to improve and just keep on at least being a competitive team, if not one of the top teams in the American Conference for sure.
Well, and remember this. I kind of think of this season as 2014-15. And, that year they came in having, just lost Sean Kilpatrick, one of the all-time great players here at UC. You can also, a lot of other players were lost. I think Justin Jackson, I'm trying to think of who else was lost. Titus Rubles, yeah, quietly a great player. And even though Troy Copain was just coming into the prime of his collegiate career, you still didn't know what that team was going to do. Mick Cronin ultimately had to leave due to a health reason. Larry Davis took over, led the team to a tie for third place in the conference, still went to the NCAA tournament, played with Kentucky, And when I say Kentucky, remember that team that went 38-0?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the team UC went up against and actually played them pretty close. So, if that season has any indication of what this season is going to be like, I'll take it. Now, do we want to get to the Sweet 16? Do we want them to get to the Sweet 16? Heck yes, we do. Can they? That remains to be determined.
Yeah, one thing I think there's two things I think you know what you're going to get with a Mick Cronin team. They're going to play hard defensively, and they're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the country. And I think depth is always key. I think, no matter what, he's going to play 9, 10 guys. And this year I think I think they're going to be okay on the bench because you got guys coming back like Trevor Moore and Keith Williams and Elios Osemi, guys that they're going to have a little more expanded roles, but they've been here for a year, so they kind of know what to expect. And I think UC is going to be deep again, and, we'll see where, what Jaron Cumberland, because I think Jaron Cumberland's kind of going to be, like you mentioned, SK. He's going to have to be like a Sean Kilpatrick, a guy that's going to have to score, 18 a game, because I think there could be some could have some tough time scoring.
But do you think he can?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's super talented. I think, I think Jaron Cumberland's one of those guys. I think he's really going to show off what he can do because it flashes. You've seen it the first 2 years of his career. How good he really can be and how he's already taken games over. But, now that Gary Clark, Evans, and Kyle Washington are gone, now I think he's just going to be the focal point.
Jaron Cumberland, they don't win that first-round tournament game last year without him.
Right.
They don't. His 27 points saved the Bearcats from a monumental upset.
Right.
Even though they ultimately did suffer one at the hands of Nevada, a game I was at and a game I'd like to forget. But let me ask you all a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be a hangover from that game at the start of this season?
I don't think a hangover necessarily. I think more like a vengeance. Like they're not happy with how they ended last season, and they want to get back there, and they want to prove to everyone that hey, they are a Sweet 16 team, and hey, we can get back there.
For me, I'm actually a little bit on the opposite side of that front. I think they actually might. It'll be tough out the gate. I'll say. Sometimes it just takes a little minute to get your head off the bed, so to speak. And that was a tough loss to end the season last year. And so they're gonna have to really come with their guns blazing, really ready to play. Because if they don't, they're gonna in a home opener you can have a letdown sometimes, and it might take a couple games to really get it back on track. But overall, this season still is very promising. One game doesn't define the whole season.
No, and that's what I said last year after the Crosstown shootout. They lost that game. That was their first loss this season, but their season clearly was not defined by that. They had a fantastic regular season. They won the conference tournament, as ugly as it might have been. And, the tournament, you can forget about it like we all want to. But I will say this, and Ethan, you said that you're on the opposite of Caitlyn, who thinks that there won't be. I'm a little skeptical because you do have to think about that, but let's understand that I think they're going to be ready. New arena, playing Ohio State. They know it's a must-win game. I think if they treat it like not just any other game, if they come out ready to play, if Jaron Cumberland comes out and scores, let's say 10 points right out of the gate or whatever, and that team just starts firing up threes, whatever, getting the crowd into it, I guarantee you right now, that's going to pump a lot of momentum into that team, which is something that they need.
Yeah, I think back to the loss in the tournament last year. I think for the players, I think the first couple weeks of the offseason might be a little tough, like what it could have been. But after that, you get prepped for the next season, and I think you put it behind them, and that's why they roll out the balls for a new year, and they got a chance to kind of get some vengeance, and we'll see. But I think. For fans, it's going to be tough. I mean, we're always going to remember that, unfortunately. It's always going to be ingrained in our minds. But for the players, I think after a couple weeks, it'll be tough. Maybe for Coach Cronin, it was probably, a couple weeks, but I think they're over it. I think they're going to forget about it. All right.
Yeah, and that's a great point you bring up there. It's, we as fans are never going to forget. It's a scar you have as a sports fan. We can't do anything about it. We're not the ones playing the games. The players can. They played the games. I'm not sure if they're ever going to completely forget about it, especially, Gary, Kyle, and Jacob. Yeah. That was their last game, and, even Jackson Bart, who was a part of that team. But, let's just hope, and I think we'll know early on. First game, Ohio State, I think it's almost a blessing for us because we'll be able to see if they're in fact over it. So we hit on the non-conference. It's tough. I mean, you mentioned the tournament, the Emerald Sports Classic after Thanksgiving, the fact they go to Mississippi State, UCLA, and then, of course, the Crosstown Shootout's like the biggest game of the year. Right. Let's go to the conference schedule. It starts on Wednesday, January 2nd, 6:30 p.m. against Tulane. It's here in Cincinnati at Fifth Third Arena. You know, you have some 2-game road trips, 2-game home stands. You know, is there a part of the conference schedule, if you've looked at it, that concerns you as far as the Bearcats' chances of doing well in it?
I mean, we're ranked number 2, right? We're like preseason, and I think Central Florida was ranked above us. So I guess maybe that game, but I mean, maybe just that one is like a bigger threat. Like, I think they tend to do pretty well, like, against conference teams, and last year, I mean, they won it, and I think, like, with that mindset, like, when you're, like, the defending champions, like, you come out with, like, a different kind of attitude, like, oh, like, we just need to keep staying at the top and, like, top of our game, so.
And they play UCF here Thursday, February 21st, right after they play Wichita State. So if there's a home game that would concern you, Caitlyn, that might be.
That's it. I mean, okay. Yeah, I think it helps that they are at home, though. I think that's a huge, like, benefit for them. But I do think that would probably be one of our toughest home games for sure.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that. I definitely think Wichita State would probably be the most fearful game, along with Houston and Memphis right before that. That's probably just a tough 3-game stretch right there where they really have to make sure they don't have any letdowns, because if they can win all 3 of those games potentially, they'll really be able to go onto a roll down the stretch of the season, and then they'll have good momentum going into the playoff.
Go ahead, Zach.
I think the first 5 games UC is fortunate in the conference schedule. It's pretty. They start out really easy, and then after that it kind of gets tough. But the American as a whole is down this year. You know, UConn and Memphis kind of starting over, new coaches. Wichita lost everything. Houston, they'll be okay, but they won't be great. I think that could benefit UC, and while UC they're not gonna be as good as they were last year, I think the American's open. UCF is pretty good. I think the hype around them is big, but I think the teams to really look out for would be Houston and UCF. Those will probably be the biggest challengers to UC. I think UConn and Memphis, it'll kind of take time for them to get back going, which the American really needs those teams to get back to prominence.
If this conference is going to be like, let's say a Pac-12 or, another one of the lesser Power 5, maybe the Big 12 to me is really good. I don't know. I guess the Pac-12 is the only one that I can name in that situation. Anyway, yeah, I think, Zach, you hit on a great point here. Look at the first, 5 games. Tulane, East Carolina, Tulsa. Tulsa could be a tough game. Frank Haith always has those guys ready to play. I mean, they always seem to succeed expectations for whatever reason. UConn, I mean, the history of UConn, when these, UC and UConn were in the Big East. USF, South Florida, I'm not too worried about that game as a fan. Obviously it's an important game. It's a conference game. You need to win it. But, yeah, the back half of the schedule. You have trips to Memphis and Houston back-to-back. Then, Caitlyn, you hit on it, Wichita State and UCF. At UConn, at SMU. That's going to be tough. That's nothing easy right there. Home against Memphis, at UCF versus Houston to end the season. Now, the thing about that is, if you win those games, you have a lot of momentum going into the tournament. Last year, they lost 2 games right around kind of like the late middle part of the season. Everybody's panicking. They drop out of the top 10. But they won their last 4 games, including that thriller at Wichita State. That generated momentum going into the tournament. If it happens this year again, I think that's what we all would like to see.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm not so worried about how the Bearcats start the season. It's definitely about how they close, which is we see with Cincinnati teams all the time. It's about what they do in the postseason. It's time for them to wake up. Somebody's going to end the curse. I don't
It already is over, Ethan.
Debbie Downer.
It's already over. FC Cincinnati ended it October 20th.
One win, that's not really enough when you're the number 1 seed. I'm going to just leave it alone.
That's true.
Well, it is.
No, I agree completely on that one.
But I'm just saying.
Maybe they had too much. Maybe they had a hangover. So now we have to deal with hangovers.
Well, 1-0s are always hard to lose in soccer. But anyway, the thing is that the Bearcats basketball, they really, it's important for them to really be a second half of the season team. They really be more concerned about making sure they handle their business in the first half, obviously, and make sure things are rolling and have their lineups and rotations and everything set and ready to go. So when the postseason comes around, no matter if they're a 2 seed or a 6 or 8 seed, whatever, any team can win the tournament when you get to March Madness. So they just got to get there.
Well, I mean, as we saw last year, I mean, with you happen to UC. Now, my gut, I'm just gonna say this. My conscience told me that even if we got at the Sweet 16, you would have played Loyola Chicago. Do you think UC would have won that game?
Absolutely, for me.
You do? I mean, that would have been a perfect recipe for UC to lose that game.
I don't know. I mean, as a fan, I would want to say, like, yeah, I think they would have won, but, like, Loyola was on fire. There was no stopping them, and I can't remember her name. Sister Jean. Sister Jean, Sister Jean. Like, I would not bet against her. No way. No way.
That's why I would have been nervous had they played that game in Atlanta, which I was all set to go to, and then, that Thursday I ended up being here watching the game at home, and I was like, why? But that was last year. This year, expectations. Obviously, there's not can you get the sense that there's not a lot of high expectations? Like last year going in, you knew this team was going to be really good. How about this year?
I mean, overall, like, there's not as much hype as there was last year for sure, and I definitely think that people have, like, low expectations for us for sure. But I mean, they had low expectations for our football team too, and look at us now. So, like, I honestly think that maybe we could, like, thrive off that and, like, use it to our advantage.
It's a big week. I mean, you hit on it, Caitlyn. Like, 3 days after UC plays Ohio State in basketball, they play South Florida in football, and that's a huge game. That's a big-time game. Both teams have one loss. Winner probably continues to chase for the East Division title. Loser, I'm sorry, is out. And you have to win that game at home, I think, if you're Cincinnati, especially after losing 33-3 at South Florida last year. But they're much improved this year, like you said.
No doubt. They have to that's a must-win game right there. And it's unfortunate they lost against Temple because I really do believe that UC football should still be undefeated right now. To be honest, that was a heartbreaking loss against the Temple Owls.
Was it there?
Hey, it happens, So at the end of the day, they got to just keep rolling. And the schedule's there's still some tough games after that South Florida game as well. So they got to make sure they get that one for sure.
But as far as your expectations go for basketball season?
For basketball, I think the Bearcats are going to be in a 20 high 20 win range this year. They might not get quite to 30, but they will still be a very competitive team, and definitely 25 plus wins for the Bearcats this year, and should still get you a good seed in the March Madness tournament.
Last time they won, I think exactly 25, they were an 8 seed, which isn't terrible, but it's not great.
I was about to say, like, I think 25 wins is a good number. Probably put you 8 or 9 seed, I think, would be fine, and then you win a game in the tournament. Look, I mean, when you lose Gary Clark, Kyle Washington, Jacob Evans, it's hard to sit up here and say, oh, I still think we can, win 30 games and be a 2 or 3 seed. I just think it's going to be a little bit tough. I think they're going to take a little step back, which, I mean, is kind of expected when you lose those guys. But, I mean, they could surprise me. They could maybe make a Sweet 16. Who knows? Anything can happen in March. You would see Loyola and Nevada and those teams. But, yeah, 8-9 seed, win a tournament game. I think that's a fair kind of expectation.
I think you're right. You know what also the season reminds me of? So the same year that UC had Sean Kilpatrick, Justin Jackson, Titus Rubles, and all those guys, Michigan State had, like, Adrian Payne, Keith Ablin, yes. Most experienced team in the nation, lost in the Elite Eight to UConn. The next year, everybody was, not sure how they were going to do. Guess where they ended up going? The Final Four. Yeah. Could that happen to UC this year? Hey, the Final Four is in Minneapolis. Last time it was there, 1992. Guess who went to the Final Four that year? You got it, Cincinnati. My expectations, just as a fan, enjoy the day-by-day journey through the season. There's no pressure on this team to do anything. Win the regular season, win the conference tournament, go to the Sweet 16, go to the Final Four, win a national championship, etc. Well, actually, there is no etc. after national championship. Just, I expect this team to be competitive. I expect this team to, finish in the top half of the conference. I think the top 3 is reasonable. And, as far as the tournament goes, I expect them to at least be the higher seed in the first round. And, when we get to the second round, we'll see what happens there. But now we're going to go to a little bit more, well, I guess our expectations are subjected to our own opinion. But let's go to what we think constitutes a successful season.
I mean, it's different. I think it's different for every kind of program. I think if you ask the coach at Delaware State, they might say, "Well, let's just try and maybe reel off some wins and get to the NCAA tournament."
In a smaller conference.
Yeah, right. I mean, but if you're at like a UC, I think a realistic expectation is like get to the Final Four, or our friends over at Norwood State who haven't made a Final Four get to a Final Four. But I mean, the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Kansases, they want to win a national championship. So I think it just varies, depending on what conference you're in. But at the end of the day, UMBC beats Virginia.
Did any of you expect that?
Yeah, right. So
busting my bracket for sure.
Oh yeah,
busted mine. Yeah. The day after Arizona busted mine.
Well, that was my pick to win the whole thing that year. Yeah.
Well, I think Zach hit on it, pretty well. And for the record, Delaware State is in the Mid-Eastern.
MEAC.
Is it Mid-Eastern American Conference?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, you get the point. We'll call it the MEAC. I think Cincinnati, having not been to a Final Four in 27 years, they're not considered a blue blood like a Duke of Kansas or a Kentucky, North Carolina. But you can definitely, say that this team is Final Four worthy. Maybe they'll surprise a lot of people. Heck, Loyola Chicago did it. And the year before that, South Carolina did it. So there have been some surprise teams that have been to the Final Four. Are the Bearcats going to be a surprise team this year? Maybe. I think NCAA tournament is definitely something that would constitute a successful season. I think getting to the Sweet 16 definitely is something. But I think just overall, being competitive, finishing in the top 3 of the conference, get a 2 or a 1 seed in the conference tournament, get to at least the championship, or if you don't, at least play competitively in the semifinals and lose to a worthy opponent, like let's say a Memphis, who I think is going to be pretty good this year, or Houston, despite losing Rob Gray. I think that's what constitutes a successful season. Always competing for championships, and when it matters most, winning games.
Yeah, for me, I definitely think that the Bearcats will be definitely in the top echelon of the American Conference, for sure. Really just going to come down to how they perform in the tournament. Realistically, I think they can definitely go far. They could go as far as the Elite Eight for me. I mean, when you have teams, like you said, like Duke, who had 3 of the top 5 players, I think, on one team,
they're
basically. And then Kentucky, John Calipari and then Tom Izzo. But as we've seen every year, it may not be who UC has to go against. It might be who the teams in their bracket lose against, possibly, to open up a door for them. And that's all it takes in March Madness. So I wouldn't close the door on anything. I think realistically they could get as far as the Elite Eight, but maybe better. Hopefully that's how it turns out this season.
Yeah, I agree with all of you guys. I honestly think that just making it past the second round in the NCAA tournament would be a good goal, and I think that they can definitely achieve that for sure.
For the record, the last time UC played Ohio State in any game was in the Sweet 16 in 2012, a game that UC actually was in for a while. Ohio State ultimately won it, and Ohio State ultimately went on to the Final Four. Well, that concludes our basketball season preview half-hour segment of the show. Now we're going to get into what has been a very entertaining, fun, captivating season, the revival of the Bearcats football team led by second-year head coach Luke Fickell, 7-1, 3-1 in the conference. Man, you wish you could have that loss to Temple back. As you said, Ethan, I was there. It was crushing. But 7-1, great overtime win in SMU. James the Freak Wiggins, 86 yards for the interception return for the game-winning touchdown. This week, they're home against Navy, 3:30 p.m. on ESPN. Roy Philpott, Tom Ramsey will have the call. But let's go back to the SMU game because I'll leave it to you guys because that's basically how you can describe it. Nerve-wracking, whatever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being up 17-7, you're thinking, all right, we're going to pull away. We're going to win. And then you go down, and and then Cole Smith makes the kick, which was good to see from him. And then in overtime, Wiggins jumping that route and taking it back. You find a way, and unfortunately weren't able to do it against Temple, but I think SMU is a team they should beat at the end of the day. They just found a way. They scrapped, they clawed. It wasn't the prettiest thing ever, especially offensively at times, but you go on the road and you beat anybody in your conference. It's an accomplishment. So
I think that's a great point. And, no game is easy, especially in football. Going on the road and, coming off a loss, too. I mean, it was something different for this team. Of all the great things that have happened this year and all the great strides they've made, well, the one thing they hadn't done was play after a loss. Now, I'm going to say this. I thought this game was great to see the stars come out. I'm talking about Desmond Ridder throwing for 352 yards, a career high. I'm talking about Khalil Lewis with 174 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And Michael Warren didn't have a great game. He had a good game. I mean, he had 67 rushing yards and 45 receiving yards, including that big first down reception on the last regulation possession. It's a lot of uns there at the end of the words there I just said. Anyway, I think if that's an indication of what the Bearcats need to do in this stretch run, the stars need to come out. Khalil Lewis needs to have great games in these last 4 weeks. Desmond Ridder is going to be tested, against great defenses. Can he deliver? Well, I mean, he showed against SMU his ability to bounce back from what was a not so good game at Temple. He was only 14 of 33 for not even 150 yards. It was not a great game. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Right.
And, James Wiggins being named Defensive Player of the Week in the conference. Cole Smith, who, I mean, if that field goal kick didn't, make you want to literally throw up on it.
After like three attempts of icing, I was like, at this point, just let him kick the ball, please. Just like, I mean, that last one, I was sitting there like panic mode last 5 minutes. But like when the first two, I was like, oh man, he's just knocking these through. And that third one, then I was like, oh my Lord, if this is not curve, don't know what's gonna happen.
It's so funny what you can think about in split seconds when you see that ball curve. Or,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's like when Andy Dalton was trying to tackle the Colts defensive back who picked him off on this first pass of the season. You all know what happened the last time he tackled a defender when he got picked off. He broke his thumb, and
oh my
don't
God.
remind me about that game. I knew the play they were running. I knew it wasn't a good one when Dalton threw the pass. Anyway, when Cole Smith kicked that field goal, I'm like, if this misses, then it goes in. You go to overtime. Let me ask you all a question. Do you all remember last year against SMU in overtime here in Cincinnati? I know you might.
Yeah, that was
Ethan, Caitlyn, do you guys?
I
don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, Caitlyn, you were still in high school, but that's still okay. I mean, you were a proud Cincinnati, and anyway. So, last year, game goes to overtime. UC has SMU pinned at 4th and 26. You're thinking they're not going to get this, right?
Wow.
Well, sure. Well, sure enough, they do. SMU kicks a field goal, goes up by 3. Cincinnati's first possession ended in 2 plays after Hayden Moore was picked off.
Oh, picked off.
They ruled it an interception. I thought it was a fumble when I saw it from the press box, but of course my angle wasn't that great because I couldn't see the ball very well. Anyway, I was thinking about that this year. I'm like, if we lose again to SMU in overtime, but then James Wiggins undercuts the route so beautifully, just like he did against OU, Ohio, runs it back the other way. We're going berserk in Mios, and it was a great, great win for the Cincinnati Bearcats. A young team winning that game on the road. I don't care how good SMU is 3-5 now. Is that good? No, it's not terrible. A win's a win.
I mean, yeah, you got to beat the teams that are on your schedule at the end of the day. And the Bearcats have won 7 out of 8 of them so far, and that's what they're supposed to do. They definitely have. It really showed a lot to me about their guts and just the way Luke Fickell is instilling toughness in their mindset, because it's a tough loss at Temple. So to basically be in a similar situation the following week and respond to that adversity in a different way and pull out a victory, that just gives you a promising future to show that down the rest of the season, they really should learn from those couple experiences to now, especially being such a young team, no matter what happens this season, they can take these results into next year and really keep building on this program that Luke Fickell seems to be doing so greatly.
I think, like, having that loss, like, yeah, we don't want a loss, like, we're going to be the undefeated team, but, like, that gives you, like, motivation. Like, we don't want to feel like this anymore. Like, we don't want to, like have people down on us. And I think that, like my dad always says, like, you never want to play a team after they lose, because they come back and they, like, come back with that vengeance. So, like, I think that definitely, like, if we were to lose, I think that was a good point in the season. Like, we had a really, really good run at the beginning, like, kind of got us, like, knocked, like, okay, like, we, like, aren't, like, invincible, and then, like, going back and finishing the season strong the rest of the season.
Yeah, going undefeated, I mean, I'm sure every team wants to do that, but there's a great excerpt from Jay Billis's book Toughness. I'm not sure if any of you have read it. It's a very good book. Yes, I grew up a Tar Heels fan and read a book written by a former Duke Blue Devil. Okay. However, John Gruden, who, I can talk about him all I want as far as what he's done this year, but he's a great coach and a great analyst. He said when he coached the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, talked about how this, he would always tell his team that despite their goal of going undefeated, there was a good chance that was not going to happen. You have to have a contingency plan for adversity because you're going to face it. So the Bearcats, the loss to Temple was a blindside. I didn't think any of us expected it. We knew Temple was good, right? But we didn't think they'd beat Cincinnati. They did. Oftentimes teams will let a loss linger. The sign of a great team, though, is one that doesn't. They come out in the next game and win. They don't wait until the next week. They win the next week after the loss.
Yeah, I mean, that really it just brings the momentum forward to Navy now. And now you got a team like Navy that really will be a tough opponent, but I think they can really, just because of the triple option and what that offense always brings to the table, you just always have to be prepared for it. But I think a little fickle, especially defensively. This team is very, very sound defensively so far with their statistics this season. So they should really just keep that momentum going at home in Nipper Stadium.
Well, and let's go there because, that's where we're going to go to next. Last year, Navy, of course, won against Cincinnati 42-32. In that game, Navy rushed for 569 yards. 569 yards. You know how many UC rushed for? 58. They only lost by 10 there.
Good stat.
Now, of course, we talked about it, Caitlyn, on our show, and Ethan, you were on it as well, leading up to the Tulane game. This team's defense is so much different than it was last year. Just where they are right now, and Zach, you might know this. Currently, right now, they rank third down conversion percentage defense, third in the nation. Fourth down conversion percentage defense, 9. Don't even know why I'm reading that. Let's go to rush defense, 11th in the nation. They lead the American Athletic Conference. They're also 9th in scoring defense in the nation. They lead the American. Get ready for this. Scoring defense, rushing defense, total defense, punting, opponent first downs, opponent third down conversions, and fourth down conversions. It's unbelievable how far this defense has come.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think you look at it, Fickle's second year, he's able to kind of mix in some of the guys he recruited. I think especially in the secondary, Kobe Bryant's played really well, Derek Forrest, and those kind of guys, and Jarrell White, linebacker. And then you mix in the guys up front that have they're experienced, and they played so well. I mean, Cortez Broughton struggled last year mightily, and he's been one of the best defensive players. He might win defensive player in the year of the conference. He's been so good. Marquise Copeland, just up front, these guys they've bought in and all over they're really good, all over the place at linebacker, the secondary. I think they're a lot of guys with top 5 and pass breakups. So it's like night and day, and not a ton of the personnel is the same, but year 2 when you figure things out, it makes a big difference.
I feel like last year you also knew who the defensive players were, but that didn't really, it didn't matter because UC was getting run off the field every single game. This year, you know the defensive players because they're good. That's a good thing.
Absolutely, and sometimes defense takes time to gel. I mean, systems is everything, and as you see with the Bengals, their defense is having trouble right now with a new coordinator. So sometimes it takes a year or two to get a new system in the gear. And get the players to buy into the system. All the check downs and all the different communication they got to go through. A lot of things that go into defense that I can't even tell you as far as compared to people playing the game. So it's a tough thing, but they've obviously got their act together, and they look like they're one of the most stellar defenses in the country.
I definitely think that if they're gonna win this week, that their defense is gonna have to shine, and that's gonna be what gets them the win.
Navy, for the record, comes in averaging 307.3 rushing yards per game. Now, that's a lot, and you normally, I think, going into a game, want to hold them to under their season average. But in this case, I think if you even hold them at the average, considering what you gave up last year in terms of rushing yards, I think you'd be in a great position to win because they are a run. That's all they do, besides maybe 2 or 3 passes a game. Now, when those passes come, you have to be prepared for them because, that's how Navy made big plays last year and really, kept UC from really cutting so deep into the game, into the lead that Navy built.
Yeah, I think one of the things is, you got to force them. You got to dare them to pass almost because they're so run heavy. I mean, they ran for 600 yards against us last year, and they're not going to have a gunslinger at quarterback or anything. He's completing like under 50% of his passes. So, that's one of those things. I'm sure they're practicing all week. Their assignments and what they got to do, and the formations to look at, but. If anything, load up the box and one-on-one on the outside, dare them to throw. If they probably won't, and they'll Navy, I'm sure, will find their way around that. But it's one of those things. The option when you don't see it, it can be tough at first. But I think getting that experience last year, a lot of the guys, you have a lot of the guys back on defense. They've seen it now. And I think, after giving up the 600 yards, I think they'll be motivated to kind of try and shut it down.
Not only practicing this week, but Luke Fickell mentioned yesterday that they practice this in the offseason. Navy is a special, unique offense that you have to be so ready for. Not only for, tracking who's going to get the ball on, every play, but they also can throw multiple quarterbacks at you.
Right.
Malcolm Perry and Zach Abey. And their other quarterback.
Garrett Lewis.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew his last name was Lewis because I, of course, watched my other team, Notre Dame, against Navy on Saturday, which Notre Dame won 44-22. Navy, by the way, coming in, 5-game losing streak, first time in 7 years that they've lost 5 in a row.
Yeah, well, I watched that game also last weekend. It's nice because I could kind of see what we were going to be up against, but they just did not look very good. That kind of gave me, some confidence. I was like, UC can totally come in here and, not overconfident, cockiness, but, Notre Dame's an amazing team. They're, 4 this week, I think, in the AP polls. And, you're going to get a team like that, and they're going to blow out Navy. But, I think UC has a chance to definitely win, if not maybe have a heavy lead on them for sure.
This game is so important because when the schedule came out, this game and the remaining 4 games stood out to me. Why? Because look at the teams. Navy, you know what you're going to get when you play Navy. South Florida, Central Florida. Those 2 teams battled for the division title last year. UCF ultimately won the Peach Bowl. That's a New Year's Six Bowl. They claim themselves as national champions. I'll put it to you that way. East Carolina even, is an important game because UC lost to them by 28 last year. Don't even remind me about that game.
That was just bad.
Defense was bad.
I think I turned the game off.
Actually,
I went down to do laundry because I spilled garlic sauce on the blanket in my bed. That was a fun afternoon. Anyway, but Luke Fickell talked about after the game on Saturday that it's so easy to look past this game to South Florida and Central Florida, but then Navy is a tough team, and I don't care if they're 2-6, they're still very, very good. They're young. They don't, they're not as experienced as they might have been last year, coming off a division title in the conference where they played for the conference championship. It's still an important game. And you have to respect what Navy's going to bring.
Every game counts. It's really now or never. Definitely can't sleep on any team in college football. I got to play every team hard in your schedule. And the Bearcats need to win this one and really win this one soundly. I think winning this game, if it's too tight of a game in the fourth quarter, it's kind of really reflecting more on the Bearcats, in my opinion, than on Navy. They really got to show up, especially if a team like Notre Dame, but we all know is a perennial top 4 team in college football right now. But the Bearcats are not bad either. They're not shabby either, 7-1. And if they're going to be a team that can maybe compete for a big-time bowl this season, then they got to win this game and win it soundly.
Saw a stat earlier today that Navy's in the middle of a stretch where they are playing. Yeah, they're in the middle of a stretch, 3-game stretch, where the combined record of their opponents, Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and who's after Cincinnati?
South Florida.
Central Florida. A little tougher, but you get the point. Right. Their combined records, 23-2, or record. So Navy's in a tough stretch right now, so they're going to come ready to play. Yikes. Obviously, the first key to this game that I have listed is stop or contain somehow the triple option. How do you do it?
Well, look at the NFL right now with how the read options and all the wildcat formations you do. Just like with Cam Newton, got mobile guys, RG3 when he was at his peak. Got to be able to
I can't believe you
defend.
just mentioned his name.
He had a great rookie year, though. Let's not forget, in Washington now. And in Baylor with a Heisman Trophy as well.
I'll give you that.
But you can't just look at the quarterback. There has to be somebody that's looking out for who the pitch guy is going to be. And you got to be able to defend both sides. Everybody has to stay in their gaps, because if one gap opens up, then it's a lane, and they're going to just drive right through it. So you can't leave any lanes open.
No, I think you just have to know who's getting the ball. Your eyes have to be, at the line of scrimmage, and just concentration. You can't take any plays off because Navy won't.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of like knowing your assignments, reading the quarterback, knowing, okay, if he's pitching, I gotta get out. But, I think the thing with Navy is they've been a pretty good program for, a while now. Ken Niamonalolo has been a good coach, but so I don't think they can just walk, UC can just wake up and, just think they're going to blow Navy out. I think it's, Navy still, they've been pretty, they're having a rough year, but still, I mean, they've had a history of winning, 8-9 games, so I don't think you can take this for granted.
Well, I mean, they've won 15 Commander-in-Chief's trophies, 14 bowl games in the last 15 years, and, consistently under, I can't believe you just pronounced his name.
Ken Niamonalolo.
Yeah, we'll just say their head coach. He's done I'm gonna try Ken Niamonalolo. He's done a fantastic job. One of the best and most underappreciated coaches in the nation. I think the second key though to this game, to me, is exploiting Navy's youth on defense. I think as good as Navy's offense we know coming in is, I think the Bearcats' offense has a big chance. Also, playing at home for the first time in a month.
Yeah, that's also.
I think they're gonna be ready to come out. They're gonna be ready to fire.
Where you play definitely impacts the game a ton. I mean, when Ohio State's only lost this year, they weren't at home, and the whole atmosphere. If you just watched. Everyone around at Purdue, it just, engulfed them. Same thing, I mean, ours is one of the loudest stadiums in the country, so, if we come out and, as, a school and, our cheering section is very loud, and,
It's been that way.
Yeah, and our team, builds off of that, and then the other team, when they're coming towards that end zone right in front of the cheering section, it's hard to hear, and, that definitely plays a big part on, the quarterback and, hearing what they're trying to say and everything.
Yeah, and I think they just need to get off to a fast start, really, is the main thing. Definitely don't let Navy hang around, because and it gets into the fourth quarter, they can run the clock, they can keep running and running. They're going to play possession football. So it's important that the Bearcats, when they do get the ball, push the ball, move it, make Desmond Ridder get out of his hands, get it to Khalil Lewis, and get it to your other playmakers. And if they get points on the board fast, and Navy's going to take probably a longer time to score if your defense is doing what they're supposed to do.
It's not just Khalil Lewis, it's Josiah DeGuaria, it's Rashad Medeiros, it's Thomas Geddes. Another thing too, Ethan, you brought it up here. If you let Navy hang around, don't give them any extra possessions, because that's a huge thing against when you're playing a team like Navy in the triple option. It's so hard to stop them. Well, the one thing you don't want to do is give them an extra chance, give them an extra possession.
Yeah, we've seen it the last couple weeks, multiple times this year with the the slow start against Temple and the turnovers, and then last week they had the fumble early that kind of maybe gave SMU some momentum. So yeah, turnovers are definitely key. If you don't turn the ball over, you win the turnover margin, you got a pretty good chance to win.
Well, that was my third key to the game.
Yeah,
no turnovers.
Right.
You so much about this game is going to be about the defense. Well, it's also about offensive execution. And we saw it last year, Hayden Moore fumbled in the red zone with 2 minutes left, and it was a 10-1 game at the time. If they score, it's a 7-point game, maybe a 3-point game, and you still have a chance. I'm still mad they lost that game, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a close game.
Yeah.
And I had to leave early to go cover a soccer match that night. Don't know why I went to do that. But anyway, so I hit on it earlier, guys, but, the last 4 games are obviously very, very difficult. But just your thoughts on it. Can this team still win the East Division?
For me, yeah. I mean, they definitely have a good shot at doing it. I think they're 7-1 right now. The only game that they probably may lose is probably UCF, but they could maybe pull the upset. But that's still a 10-2 season. That's a very good season. After 2 straight 4-win seasons, that's only 8 wins combined. So in 2 years, so you get 10. And Lou Fickell's only second season as coach. That to me would not be a disappointment. That would be a building block moving forward. So whether they win the conference or not is not really necessarily the goal for me. It's more about are they in the conversation at the end of the season, and I think they'll be there.
As far as being in the conversation for a major bowl game, which, I want to see where the current bowl projections are. I should have looked at this earlier. But I think it's a great point there, Ethan. The goal might be, be the class of the league, which is a common saying around here in UC, but just be talked about as, hey, we got to hold them off. Like if UCF says that, or USF says that, or Temple, whoever wins this division, which, by the way, Temple UCF tomorrow night, 7:30 on ESPN. Very important game because UC not only has to win out, but Temple has to lose twice because Temple has beaten UC already. And that's another thing that haunts you a little bit. You don't control your own destiny because you lost at Temple. Now, I'm not trying to say Temple's bad or anything, but, you just didn't expect that.
Right.
I would think, as for the last 4 games, I think, Ethan said it, like, UCF's going to be pretty tough. But, you get, then the other 3 are at home, and, UC's, been pretty good at home. So, now, 10-2 season, I think if you asked anybody, at the beginning of the year, what do you think UC's going to do? I think or what do you hope they do? Win 6 games. And if they won 10 games, it'd be a heck of a year. And, hats off to Fickle because I don't think, not too many people were expecting potentially a 10-1 season. We'll see if they get there, but.
Right now, Cincinnati is projected to play in the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa against Florida Atlantic. I thought they'd be playing a lot higher game than that. That's according to CBS Sports, by the way. Just one source there for the record. The playoff rankings were revealed last night. Alabama 1, Clemson 2, LSU 3, Notre Dame 4, Michigan 5, Georgia 6. You can also review or look at the rankings on ESPN.com or just simply Google college football playoff rankings, I guess. But, yeah, this stretch run, it's going to be really interesting because last year you felt like, you got the hard part of the schedule out of the way early. You didn't really play all that well during it. This year it's at the end. Now what that can do is, it's all about the late bloomers. You see it. A lot of teams that win the college football playoff, they get hot late. Ohio State the first year, Alabama the second year, Clemson 2016. So if Cincinnati, if they're going to, let's say, win this division, they're going to have to beat some tough teams. Beat South Florida at home to start. The Central Florida game, you really kind of set yourself up. You can treat every game like a one-game season now. I think that's what you can do. That's why these 4 games are so important. It's extremely important to not look past Navy, and we've said that. So we're getting ready to come up on closing here tonight. So I just want to get your final thoughts and your prediction for the game. And yes, you can say what you think the exact score is going to be.
I guess I'll go first.
You can go ahead.
I think with us coming back after a month for our another home game, I think that we'll definitely pull out the win. But I don't think, and we have a chance of getting a good win, a pretty big lead. But I don't know if I'm gonna go with that. I'll probably go 21-14 UC.
Whoa, low scoring, you think?
Yeah, I think if I don't know, maybe a little bit higher, but I think that with UC's defense and Navy's defense didn't look terrible on Saturday, but it wasn't anything spectacular either. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's definitely an understatement. Notre Dame just completely ran them out of San Diego.
That's but when you're playing Notre Dame, you have to kind of put that into account.
That is true.
They're top 4, and honestly, I think they should be. I don't know, 1 or 2, but I think they probably should have had the 3rd spot this week. But that's just me.
I don't know, not over LSU.
I thought Notre Dame would be number 1 actually.
Did you? Okay.
I did.
I don't know.
And then
SEC football is a big time
and then
thing,
Kirk
man.
Herbstreit comes on the ranking show last night and says that he had the exact 6 teams in the exact order that the committee had, and it's okay, whatever.
Yeah, I think he also might have had TCU in the college football playoff instead of Ohio State the year they won as well. So
I could have told you what was going to happen then. But Ethan, your thoughts and prediction?
Yeah, if I have it be a little bit higher scoring game, I think the Bearcats will actually control it. I think they'll be able to control the clock. I think they'll win this game pretty soundly by 2 scores, 33-20. Look for the offense to be clicking, be able to keep the ball for a majority of the game. But Navy will be tough. They'll have the ball here and there. I just don't think they'll be able to get into the end zone, which ultimately is what's going to matter in a league where it just seems like kickers just don't seem to be doing the job in college or pros these days. So I'm not going to count on the kicker. And touchdowns are what wins games. And I see the Bearcats ultimately getting more touchdowns than Navy. So I'm going 33-20.
33-20. My score is right around there. I literally just, thought about it, and I'm going to say it here in a matter of seconds. I think this game is going to come down to, Cincinnati obviously stopped containing the triple option. And if Cincinnati's playing at their best, which is where Desmond Ridder is spreading the ball around, Michael Warren's, running down the middle of the field. He's getting 25 carries at least. He's, showing why he's the most valuable player to this team. I think he is. If that happens, it's going to be very difficult for a youthful defense like Navy to stop them. I think this game is going to show that this season is so much different than last year's season. If Cincinnati doesn't turn the ball over, which they won ugly last week, I'm going to admit, but winning ugly is better than losing pretty, as an old coach of mine used to say. Yeah. With that, Cincinnati 38, Navy 24. Zach?
Yeah. I think UC is going to be able to move the ball. I don't think they'll have problems. Navy's been pretty terrible defensively. I think Navy might hang around just because of the option. Can be tough to stop. And honestly, I was thinking it's literally what popped into my head when I was thinking the score was 38-23. So I think UC will win fairly easily. I think Navy might hang around for a while, but I think we'll be able to move the ball offensively, get enough stops, and maybe force a few turnovers.
30-22. Cincinnati did move the ball last year. Hayden Moore threw for 381 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. Cincinnati was moving the ball.
Right. 600 rushing yards. So.
I think the sense of urgency is higher on offense when you play Navy because you have to score and to keep up with them. If you can get into a shootout with them, it's just a matter of whether your defensive urgency overpowers Navy's offense. Well, we thank you very much for viewing this when you do, and remember that you're always playing a sport, and that's life, and that family is the most important team you will ever be a part of. Final thoughts, any of you, before we close?
Well.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. It is the final day before the cold November rain, as Guns N' Roses would say, will come in. But thank you, and go Bearcats.